We are continuous improvement, but we're making a bigger mark on technology by partnering with other people. I want to say we're known to, if you don't know what you should know, we're the people that can help bridge that gap.
Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. I'm Ari Santiago, President, CEO of IT Direct. I'm really excited to talk to today's guest. I have Bonnie Del Conte, who's the President and CEO of CONNSTEP, a longtime fixture in Connecticut manufacturing. I'm very excited to hear her perspective, their new partnership with CBIA, and other things that she's got a lot of skills and knowledge on. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming in today. I super appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're very welcome. And listen, it's the Made in America podcast. So we start off with the same two questions. What do you make? Why do you make it?
We make resources available to our manufacturers, and why we do it is to keep people in business and competitive in the state of Connecticut, make our economy stronger, better, and products that we love and that are made here.
That's great. And I can't wait to get into that because I know you've watched some of the episodes and you know CONNSTEP has come up time and time again from the manufacturers that we've spoken to and helping them in a lot of ways. So I'm really excited to talk about that and hear about the different ways that our audience could benefit from getting engaged with CONNSTEP more, because there's a lot more companies out there that could benefit from that. But before we get into the business side, let's get a little on the personal side, Bonnie. How did you become the President and CEO of CONNSTEP? Like, I know you're born and raised a Connecticut woman, a Bristol girl. Mm-hmm. Maybe kind of give us the background. How'd you go from Bristol to President CEO of CONNSTEP?
Sure. Actually, yes, as you said, in Bristol, and my grandparents were in manufacturing, but it was nothing that I thought about, especially probably of being a woman back when I was graduating and going to college. So I actually became an accountant, but in my years of being a public accountant, my main thrust of my accounting base was manufacturing. At a small manufacturer in Poughkeepsie. I had 2 in Bristol. I had 3 in Farmington. So I got to see the operation side, the financial side, and an understanding of what they went through as far as having to have orders, inventory, and certainly the costs and the financial responsibilities of that. So I knew a little bit about it, but not what I'm doing right now currently with CONNSTEP. It was sort of the back side of the office, I would say. And then I was between jobs, and I applied for a controllership at CONNSTEP. So I started there as the controller and learned a little bit about each year. I was there for 3 years, and the center director, the president at that time, was relocating back to Virginia. And the board had asked me to step in and do his particular role as long as, and mine while they were interviewing. And the interviewing process was slow, arduous for probably 5 or 6 months. And I was learning more about his job and mine. And so I decided, hey, I want to apply for this.
There you go.
I've been doing it for 5 months. Why can't I apply? So I did, and I was awarded the position, and that's where I've been since 2006. So started there in 2003.
And so, and all the time that you've kind of been working at CONNSTEP, what's been so appealing to you to kind of keep going with the organization and put so much of your own personal time and energy into it?
I think it's the awareness of what we still do here in Connecticut and nationwide with my, national network team at NIST that we can talk about later. But in Connecticut itself, it's the reality of the things that we make here that are still here that most people don't know about. Mm-hmm. If we'll take a plant tour, we'll do this with our delegates from the state to see what's going on and keep them abreast and attuned on helping with legislation. But, we'll go to a small little plating company in Waterbury, and it will be one part that's made only here in Connecticut throughout the whole world that's on a engine of a, Boeing aircraft. So it's something like that to the real high-tech and really cool things that are happening in Industry 4.0 that are really state-of-the-art. So this mix between the small and the large and what we're doing is really important stuff. the history of it, watching what we've become after the Industrial Revolution and seeing how Waterbury started and different pockets in the valley and what's made in New Britain. It's really interesting, more interesting to me than accounting was. Yeah, I guess I can say that.
And well, the history of Connecticut manufacturing, to me, I've talked about it many times in the podcast. I'm so romantic about it. It's just so exciting and so interesting, the role that we've played in manufacturing and the making and the building of things, from screws and nuts and bolts and doors and hinges to aircrafts and submarines and all the places in between, plastics and wood and metal forming. Connecticut's got a long history, and I think a big future in that, in doing making things.
Sure, I agree, and I think that also, the struggles that manufacturers have, especially for attracting help and other things that are just where we are today in 2020 is exciting to help. If we can help a few of those companies with some of their challenges remain, which is really important because we're in the era now of mergers, acquisitions. It's really a global economy, and we're not the cheapest state to do business in. So if we're not helping companies, they could be acquired, and we don't want to lose the technology.
Right.
We don't mind if companies are acquired under a bigger umbrella and we're still making the stuff here, but a lot of times I'll just call the smarts of what we're doing here get abstracted and go elsewhere. And that's really, detrimental to the manufacturing business.
And so let's talk about kind of the origins of CONNSTEP and how you guys make that positive impact. So when did CONNSTEP get started? What was the impetus? And is it pretty much doing the same mission that it had when it started?
It's actually come sort of full circle. We started as a outbirth of technology transfer out of University of Connecticut. Founding fathers of our organization, actually, there's this beautiful White House that I still drive by every time I go up to Tech Park. That's where we were housed at that point. And it was around helping small businesses understand what was going to be available for new technology that was coming out of the universities. So that's in the 90s. And then during an evolution of the early 2000s for our federal program, which is through NIST, MEP, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, CONNSTEP became a center. There's 51 centers throughout the country, and we're the Connecticut Center. So we're the NIST center here. And out of that came a big buzz of lean and continuous improvement. So many of the centers that were practicing tech transfer, working with universities, now started doing continuous improvement and getting really onto the shop floor, talking about, improving lead time, quality, on-time delivery, visuals, really, and doing better, cell formation and doing things in the best capacity to bring bottom line improvement. So if you consider maybe new technologies opens up new markets, those usually add revenue and growth at that stage. This was a more focus. So we went into an era of improving the bottom line, more costs.
So working on sort of making the streamlining the operations of the companies you're working with. And so you started off, to take a step back, you started off sort of, you said technology, transfer. So, the way I try to think of that based on what you said was there was some like underlying technology, some conceptual technology that was being invented at university, or in this case, UConn, and you were trying to help move that to applied technology, helping manufacturers take this research, fundamental research, and move it to applied applications where they could actually make something with it?
Exactly, which is, I'm going to say, more difficult than doing just continuous improvement.
I would say.
The problem is that most of the manufacturers, especially right now in 2020 and have been for the past couple of years, when you have a large transportation sector, our largest, we're making airplanes or we're making ships, in that it's really difficult when demand is high for someone to take their eye off of what they're doing in production. So it's easier to say, how can we help you there than let me talk to you about composites and where your business is going, because they'll pick up their part and say, I need to make this. I need to make 5 million of them. I need to make them out the door. with with
High
good quality,
sure.
and no waste and no returns and defects, so I can stay in that supply base.
So, a lot of stuff we've heard on the podcast related to CONNSTEP has been surrounding lean and improvements of efficiencies. So how did that transition for CONNSTEP happen, where you got into that from the trend, taking fundamental research and making it applied? How did you guys make that pivot?
Well, it happened a little bit before, I took the president role, but it was happening then. We were just we were doing more lean engagements. We were hiring lean engineers. We were hiring people that were in businesses that were really cutting edge and had seen cost savings as being a big benefit. We were working with people and learning applications from people. Art burn that was at wire mold. So really cutting edge people was easy for us to replicate and start training our people. So our hiring went in a different direction. Some technologists that were the original founders, we now became a lean champion. So we were hiring industrial engineers, people that were doing this inside their particular shops.
So what's the typical profile of a company that should call CONNSTEP?
Sure. In what we do, we have a definition of small to medium-sized manufacturers within the MEP system, and that's under 500 employees. I would say anytime we get to over 200, between that 2 and 5, they have their own continuous improvement teams. They have their champions in there. They have their cells. They have people that are employed, a handful of people that they're continuous improvement experts. Where we fit and help that, we help train some of those champions to be the next generations. For our work going in and working on a plant floor, I'm going to say our sweet spot client is probably about 75 employees. They have a good management team, scarce for resources for building that entirely onto the next generation of people that they're employees. So that's probably where we do our biggest bulk of business, and those are the people that call on us.
But we've got a number of smaller organizations, more in like the 20, 30, 40 employee size, speak really highly of CONNSTEP. So it seems like you guys engage there and drive a lot of value there as well.
We do, and that's probably usually in the areas of more training, supervisory training, our training programs that are certification programs that will take either people in continuous improvement or quality now and train them some basic skills. It's a little bit more hands-on versus a little larger company that might have somebody doing this. We're helping them with capacity planning and some of the new technology and where they go to fit with an integrator to look at some of their systems and design for automation. So they're different things, but we're pretty well-rounded. And we work with companies that are 5 and 10. Those are a little bit sometimes more outreach. It's advice. Where to go, where to find resources, where to go. So we'll spend a lot of time with doing some outreach just to help them get on a guided path. And maybe they're more Kaizen approach versus full, deeper projects because they don't have the resources and they're small.
And so, how do people, so that sounds like there's a lot of different ways to engage with CONNSTEP. So maybe talk a little bit about that. What are the different ways that manufacturers who are in the audience listening right now, just really want to try and bring them some value? How would they go about engaging in CONNSTEP? Talk a little bit about that and what they could see in a value in their business, what the outcomes they could expect are.
Sure. Well, maybe I'll talk about our business model a little bit first, so that would help. We service the entire state of Connecticut. We have a business development team, and we're by district, and they're calling on our manufacturing base all the time. They're either calling by just calling into the companies and saying, do you know we're out here? Stopping by. And then there's our existing clients that they keep repurposing what we do and keep being a trusted advisor. In order to reach us, if someone's not going out doing that, we also have someone that does calls, lead generation, to let them know we're out there. We have our website, and we try to make things simple where our products are in 3 different buckets. They're in growth services, which include technology, as I mentioned before, or getting new markets, new leads, how to get a new product developed and out to market, some top line to get people, because everybody...
So it's called gross services?
Growth services. So we'll bucket those in the growth services. We partner with other MEP centers that have stronger suits. We're all known for different things throughout the network, which makes us a great network because we can call...
What are we known for in Connecticut?
Well, unfortunately and fortunately, we're still heavily based on continuous improvement with a message through our system that all centers need to be going into technology. So we're balancing both of them.
Right.
Again, our shops are job shops. They're smaller. We're differently structured, and we're a different manufacturing base than California.
Sure, of course.
For all the reasons that we're all aware of. So we are continuous improvement, but we're making a bigger mark on technology by partnering with other people. I want to say we're known to, if you don't know what you should know, we're the people that can help bridge that gap.
Gotcha.
So technology, for example, we have people now embedded, and we're trying to work with Yukon Tech Park. That is very big to a small manufacturer. What does that even mean that they're doing up there? The people that are members of the park are the Comcast, the Eversource, and they're working on very high-tech whatever it is, it's much more advanced. So what we try to do is say, that piece of technology there, how can that help your business flow? Don't worry about that they're embedded in hearing and communications about sound bites that you don't understand. How about if you put that application into your process by just a visual, or if it's something like sound tracking, forget about what they're doing there. What if you can put that on your line to know you get a signal when your machine goes downtime?
Sure.
Could that help you out with total production maintenance on that machine that you normally just do after it's broke?
Got it.
So we're kind of bridging that gap of what it means to them in their small shop versus what it means to
a huge company.
A huge company, or they don't have to know what Boeing is doing and how they do it, or their tier ones, but they have to know how it's eventually going to affect them as the supplier within that chain to those companies. So,
and that's part of that growth services bucket.
That's part of growth services.
What were the other? You mentioned there was like 3 buckets. What were the other 2?
Quality is a huge bucket for us. Our ISO certifications. We're in the aerospace business where you have to have your AS 9100 and your standards and your revisions. And there's a shortage right now internally. Decades ago, everyone had a quality manager. They are people that have retired. It's not a trade that's been passed off. So there's a shortage there. So we'll do some training, at least to let people know on the quality side enough to know where their records are, where they should be kept, what they should be looking for, and to work with that internal auditor when they come in for their certification.
Sure.
We also provide the IQA services, internal quality work while they're in there. So we do that piece of it and do training for people that can replace these outgoing quality managers that they don't have any longer. So that's a big, big piece of business because as I mentioned before, in the transportation, demand is high. We're building X amount of subs that we've got contracts for. So, I'm sure you've heard this electric boat is looking for, welders and people to do this, as well as making sure their suppliers are delivering on time.
Sure.
We've got, aircrafts that we're busy building on the commercial side, so production has to stay online. Everybody's responsible for a large contract, whether that's commercial, Department of Defense work. So for us to help them just keep going on that quality side, maintains the certification, maintains their security of still being a supplier and their work and their contracts.
Do you still see a demand in quality outside of the DoD, and aerospace, aircraft stuff? Because there's obviously other manufacturing.
There is, and I think some of the smart companies would see that as a way to promote themselves. There's other MEP centers. CONNSTEP has not done this, but there's other MEP centers that have their quality certifications to let them say to their clients, we even practice quality standards in what we do with our organization. So I would say if it's not demanded of you through your supplier, it's sort of like a green certification. A lot of people, it's not a necessity. A lot of people will use this to say we're quality, we're green for a variety of reasons to a market, a piece to market. They're placing themselves in the market to say that as a good steward, as a good member of society because they care about quality, whether it's what they're building or their people. It's also an attraction in a workforce that is really a shortage of workers that, people can say, we're green, we're quality, internally here, come work for us. So it's a different way to attract on a cultural piece
sort
as
of
well.
talent as well.
Yeah.
Great. So your growth, quality, what's our third bucket?
Continuous improvement.
There you
So
go.
that's our lean, that's our certification, that's a variety. It's around workforce development. Recently, we're just launching right now, it's called Workforce Navigator, that we've taken all our pieces. Let me just back up for a minute. Workforce is, we hear about it all the time. We either hear
don't
two
say.
things.
Do you?
Yeah.
Shocking.
We'll go in and we'll either hear, shortage of workers or a demand for new markets. We need to have new clients. We need new sales. So those are the two pieces. So we talked about the growth piece for the markets. Workforce, we've taken all our products that really fall under continuous improvement, whether that's HR and supervisory training, whether that's what we do to say, here are the basic concept of leans, here's building a better cell design, from even basics of the cell layout, even in the back office, why are you moving from here to there to go to the copy machine? So doing to save steps, it's all time, it's all bottom line and money.
Sure.
So we've taken this and we've built it around a workforce navigator when we're going in and we're doing an assessment, and that'll point us in the direction of where we can go in and help by just doing a full assessment and talking to people. And when, a lot of times we'll go in and we'll hear, I'm workforce short. I just need 2 more people to do this and I'll be able to make my orders to my supplier. And when we ask some questions, a lot of times it's not the 2 people. It's the processes inside. It's the lack of automation. It's the lack of not knowing your capacity. You've got too much inventory. So by doing this under our continuous improvement bucket, it satisfies a lot of what people are looking for.
Sure.
But
that reminds me of a conversation I had with Dean from Zendex, who was talking about that they've been able to produce 30% more output and manage 30% increase in sales with actually 20% less staff. And not that that's the goal, but things happen, people move on, they retire. And so to know that you can get more throughput, if you just put a little time to your point, map it out and look for waste in the process, and the same people could actually produce more.
Sure. And Ari, that's a great point that you say about doing with less people. And you said, doesn't mean that you want to fire your people or want less people. We try religiously to call lean continuous improvement. It's
Why?
sort
Is there a negative connotation to lean?
It became a negative connotation for just what you mentioned. Oh, they're going to remove my job. They're going to be able to make 30% more. Why would they need me? When the real premise of it is all about making more, making it better, making more so you can make more and do more. So it's not about the hiring. You're just growing your company.
Yep.
But it's been a bad misnomer out in the field that lean means me personally as a person. So we try not to use that and say, if you're doing more with less, you'll have free time to grow with the company and do more. So that's really how we try to promote it, because that's really what it's
Has there been, is there still pushback a little bit on that from the people inside the companies, do you find?
Yeah, we've went through, it seems like people are coming out of it a little better, but I have to say in the past decade, there'd been people say, oh, don't mention the word lean in here because we understand that the process of it is good, but our people are scared. So recognizing that, like everything else, part of what I mentioned in this navigator has a big focus on training people of what that means. a lot of organizations, some are better than others, of bringing in their culture and letting people know, having visuals of what they're doing and how it affects them with gains, rewards. Some companies don't tie that whole thing, so some of the people that are not part of the management team are sort of left in the dark of knowing it, and that's where I think the perception becomes scary to them. So we try to bring this
Communications, everything.
Yeah.
Is that an area that CONNSTEP can help? Because I mean, listen, those of us that have run small organizations know there's the things you want to do, and then there's the things you need to do, and somehow the communication sometimes falls into the want to do and not the need to do bucket.
Yeah, and a lot of times our business model, as I said, we have business development people. We identify someone who needs our help, or we see something glaring that they might not see, and we suggest we can help with some improvement. And we'll bring in then a subject matter expert, one of our engineers, to go and make an assessment to say, this is where I think, here's a plan. And many times, before we even start with that, we'll recognize that there's a communications, a culture tone that's not either in existence, not necessarily bad, just doesn't exist, by asking questions. So how does your supervisor team feel about this? Well, they don't really know about it. Or don't talk to our supervisors because they're not happy that we're doing this. So right away, sometimes we put the brakes on what we'll do for a project in operations and bring in a trusted advisor. A couple of our people do it on staff, and we have a great partner that does that with us. And she is trained in HR supervisory skills, and we'll bring her back. And sometimes it's leadership coaching. We'll offer leadership coaching. So, we could come in and we can do an assessment and come back and say, hey, Ari, you know what? Not that you're a problem here, but let's not waste your money and try to implement this here when we think we need to help you disseminate your message out to your people right now in your team. And so we'll do team building, team coaching, and that will go down the line as even some supervisory training that we did.
So let's just dig in. And I realize you're the president and CEO and not maybe out there doing all the work. So feel free to tell me if I'm going off the reservation here. But, you've mentioned this assessment a few times. I'm over here thinking to myself, man, it sounds like every manufacturer should get this assessment and see what's going on. Like, if I'm running a manufacturing business, when do I need this assessment? What are the top couple of things where you would say, oh yeah, if you're thinking this or that, a CONNSTEP assessment would be great. And how does it work? Do we pay you for it? Like, how does that, what are the outputs? So let's start with the kind of couple of things. Hey, if these 2-3 things are true in my mind, I should probably get an assessment.
Well, we have a couple of different types of assessment.
Sure.
So when we hear, conversations with someone that they're more financially based, it's an assessment that we'll go in and we'll dig more about the numbers because we have an understanding that maybe they're missing
financially based, saying like, hey, I'm not sure how to make the ends meet. We got all this work coming in, but the profit doesn't seem to be jumping out the bottom.
Exactly. And the questions are geared around that. So I'm going to put them more in a financial bucket. They'll be about inventory. They'll be about costs. They'll be about margins.
So if I'm looking at my income statement or whatever, and I'm saying, hey, my incomes remain consistent, or I've been growing a little bit, but my margins are getting worse, or the profit's not coming out the bottom, that'd be an opportunity to call CONNSTEP and be like, hey, I could use this financial analysis. You guys would be able to help me address that?
Sure. And we would use a tool we'll ask more of those questions around that, and then do a gauge of what those responses come out of that. A lot of times they're lacking marketing. There's another base out there. They're getting their client base by just word of mouth.
Sure.
What if they went into a different, marketing, or it could lead us to, they have a product that they're selling to only one market now. What if we help them with some new product development and who those other markets out there that could use that product in a different way?
So another opportunity for me to work with CONNSTEP is I'm not growing at the rate that I should grow, or I'm concerned that my customer concentration is too high. CONNSTEP can help me with that?
Sure, because it could be too risky. We might say, if you don't diversify and something goes away, and that's what happens when you're in one market and the market is good. You tend to just keep doing what you're doing. And so we try, so that's on the diversification piece of it. The workforce piece mostly asks things around Could your workforce tell us what they do daily? Could those people that are doing that handle more or be doing it differently? So that's about a process side of things. Same people working differently. Do you understand your capacity? You're building this much and you think, I can take on this new contract because I can build this. And when we really look at the human capital, the time to run the machines, and what you can make that, even if it's 24/7, you're never going to make it because your processes aren't, they need to be short and your lead times are wrong.
Yeah.
So that's an area. The last piece is learning about automation. If you need 2 more people to move this line down here and move these parts, have you thought about maybe automating that line? Have you thought about cobots? Have you thought about robots? It's a big concept going back to where I say the tech transfer. It's hard for people in a small plant to go to a national lab and look at a robot because they say, what does that mean to you? But if we're a liaison of what's going on, I can brag a little bit about what Stanley Black & Decker is doing in their new spot at Constitution Plaza. Manufacturers that go in there and see how it's laid out, that's relative to their production cycles. So they see incoming inventory. They see where they're making a drill. Then they see where packaging is automated over here. That's relative for them to think about, here's another efficiency of automating. And that helps with, I don't have the person, or maybe I don't need the person, and I could make more. And now I'll have a different person who's more technically inclined to say, how do I automate the next, piece in my shop?
And so are you seeing that? I mean, are you guys out in these smaller manufacturers, the 30, 40, 50, 70, 100 person shops, seeing them successfully deploy cobots and robots?
Some are. Again, a lot of that depends on the leadership inside. If they want to be thought leaders and want to be looking for it, certainly that's existing. Most of the work, I have to say, is tell me how I get there. Show me how it's applicable to me. Again, embedding ourselves between Yukon Tech's Park and the small manufacturer to say what's going on, and bringing that language and understanding more at their level of what they do every single day.
So if I'm a small manufacturer and I want to engage, or any manufacturer sub 500, because I guess that's the limit, and I want to engage CONNSTEP, like how do I pay for it? Is it expensive? Is it government funded? Like how does that work?
Our pricing model, and this was at least as of about 18 months ago when we did our last study, we're probably anywhere from, depending on the level of service, 40 to 55% less expensive than a for-profit consulting firm that does what we do. How we're managed to be able to work for these prices is that our federal program that I mentioned before, NIST MEP, we have a federal grant. So there's one federal funding institute under MEP. It's a $150 million program that's out of Department of Commerce and centers by size, number of manufacturers, and what we do to remain competitive. I mean, we have to compete for the money and we have to get scorecarded to have our cooperative agreements get funded. CONNSTEP this year has $1.7 million towards our annual budget that's funded. So we take that cost and we charge X amount of our engineer's salary to that, X amount of overhead of the operations to that. Within that, it's sort of an expense reimbursement agreement. And so we'll take part of what we need to operate our organization, $5 million, we can use that 1.7 to defray some of our costs. So then we take our pricing model and we can defray whatever that percentage is out of what we charge.
Gotcha.
We found that over the years it's worked really well because we know we're competitive. We do a study all the time to make sure that we are. And we're also engaged because we do charge, and so we get a better manufacturing base of engaged clients because they're engaged because they do have some money.
Sure, put some skin in the game, value more.
Exactly. But we also keep some of our funds to outreach to those that can't afford it at all. We will never not go out and have conversations, do an assessment on someone that says, I'm struggling, I need help. We're referred many times by our partners at DECD to say we're out in the field, their business development people are talking about workforce or bringing in a new company or going to a company that's ready to close down. And they'll say, Bonnie, you need to send someone from your team out there to see what you can do to help them.
Yeah.
So we'll do a lot of hours before we'd have to start charging anybody to help and assist.
Sure.
And DECD is a partner of ours as well.
Yes.
When we bring federal dollars into the state always looks to do some match. It's not 100% of the money, but we're in their line item to be matched because we also have a scorecard that we deliver to them. So
everybody's getting scorecards from CONNSTEP, making sure we're doing stuff.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the yin and the yang of being surveyed.
Sure.
Our clients are independently surveyed by NIST MEP out of Gaithersburg of an independent survey group. So after you do a project with us within a 6-month period, you will get called, and they're 10 items that are going to be in there relative to, did you retain jobs? Did you grow jobs? Did you get any new markets or new sales? Mm-hmm. Were you able to leverage some capital investment into your company? And we get scored on that. We get ranked nationally with our other cohorts. And
how are we doing on that score?
We're doing good. We're really doing good. We drop below a threshold of 70%. We've never been, maybe once in our history, have been on a quarterly basis. We usually rank between 80 and 90%. So
that's great.
Yeah. So we're a good center. We're fine. We
so
just
let's
passed
zoom
our
out.
5
Let's
years.
like kind of zoom out a little bit, Bonnie. So what's been, since you've been at the helm of CONNSTEP, what has kind of been your vision for the impact CONNSTEP can make? We talked earlier. You said one of the things that appealed to you from CONNSTEP was the ability to make an impact in Connecticut and deal with all these manufacturers. So what has been the vision of the time that you've been in CONNSTEP, and do you feel like the organization has lived up to what you wanted it to be?
I believe it has. I believe there's always more work to do.
Right.
If you can't promote continuous improvement and not do it internally. What I think of in the past 12 years since I've been heading the organization, again, having a federal program and having some great state partners through economic development and Commissioner Lehman's office, you have to work with them what they see for their vision from a national network on the federal side, as well as to help the state what is seen for economic development there. And then you have to be able to deliver and sell the services that your manufacturers are wanting, right?
Right.
So we never
Gotta meet
go
the
shy
customers where they are.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to build anything that here we built it, come and take it. We're always continuously with our business development people and through surveys finding out what the customer wants. And our workforce navigator, as I mentioned a couple of times, that's based on customer demand of what we're hearing that what they want. That might not necessarily fall into the metrics we're being measured at through the national system, who really wants us to move in 4.0.
Yeah.
So we're with a system that says if we're not moving in 4.0, U.S. manufacturing is going to lose its competitiveness. So easy for my colleagues in California maybe to do Industry 4.0, or states that are really on cutting edge. Older manufacturing environments such as Connecticut, making, as I said, job shops, maybe not so cutting edge of, always
so
continuous.
Do you feel like, you're now in my wheelhouse, I4.0, so where, you think that there's other places that are much further ahead in 4.0 than we are, and what's enabling that? Where's the gap? I mean, a lot of the manufacturers I go to in Connecticut look pretty high tech to me.
Yeah, they definitely are. Different than maybe California, Silicon Valley, just like any other technology that we're different. We're great pockets and we're smart people. It's about people and the buzz, and it's about what we talk about right now. Why has everybody moved to Boston, and is all the technology there? So we just have to make it affordable for people to stay here, and we have to make it exciting to attract new people. And again, I'm going back to what's starting to happen in Parkville of bringing people in, community, social-based living, and to have people that want to do that, and it's a different way of thinking. And then it just starts
Right.
It's like building a church, if you fill the first pew and then people start coming, and it's just a different way of looking at it. But and it's just hard for people to do that with high cost of things, of labor, shortage of labor and high cost, to be able to feel comfortable to think out of the box while they're balancing.
Sure.
So,
well, I mean, you mentioned California and Boston as other places where there's technology growing. I mean, I don't know a lot, but I do know that California and Massachusetts aren't exactly low-cost states either. So,
but they have this way to attract people first, and then they find out about the cost later. So, and that's where I feel that we have opportunity in Connecticut to bring those people back, like we were decades ago. People went out to get maybe an education, but they came back here to live, work, raise, live in the community and raise their families. So
is CONNSTEP being pushed more and more to kind of do more of that Industry 4.0 kind of push? And how do you guys, is that something you're embracing, and how do you see that kind of pushing out?
I probably wouldn't use the word push. I'd use the word, keep it in the forefront of your mind and look of where, constantly research, constantly be knowing where the industry is going. And at the same time, do not neglect what's currently going on in bottom line, and help with this path of growth, of recognition, and balance too. So we're really balancing a scorecard. It's a balanced scorecard, but we're trying to balance that with what exists and where we can help those companies grow and succeed, and then turn them on to where the industry is going in thought and where we can help them in automation. So I think it's sort of a full cycle. It's not one or the other, which is good because we're servicing a lot, and we're, if anyone can call us on either problem or solution, we can say we know it, or we can help you, or give you a third-party consultant that is within our system to do that might do it better than us. At the same time, we're juggling the expertise of the people that we bring in, the skill set background of the people that are part of my team is very different than when I took the organization over, a decade ago. Skill sets are more varied. Culture, as I mentioned, and HR skills are very important right now. Cybersecurity is hot. I can't tell you about it. And that's something that, I probably don't need to be a visionary about. It's not going away. It's got to fit in.
Where does cybersecurity kind of connect with CONNSTEP, and how do you see that impacting, or what's the need of manufacturers in that cybersecurity arena?
I find it at this point the same way as we look at our quality projects. We feel like it'll fit in our wheelhouse of our quality management systems. People that are busy don't want to say, I need to have this certification done. I need to be blessed until I'm told I have to. And we haven't had the large OEMs and the tier ones imposing it, but it will happen, just like the ISO standards are. You must do this, because as the supply chain gets deeper and deeper, a tier one cannot follow everybody and who's supplying to who. So they're going to have some kind of justification.
Speaking of NIST, there's been a lot of push, obviously, with the NIST 800, 171 DFARS changes. That's been kind of pushed down. It's hugely impactful in Connecticut. Are you guys seeing that push kind of creating a demand more, that people are realizing how important cybersecurity is to their business?
Yes, and our director, Carol Thomas at NIST, has made it clear throughout the system that she would like some type of presence of cyber offering at every 51 centers throughout. Mm-hmm. So that being said, we've developed this map. We've got 10 areas that are homeland security based, and we've divided it by 4 regions, and we're tasking the centers that have the expertise. We've come up with a 15-point criteria for a center we're calling them go-to centers. Yep. So they don't have to be large, but mostly, as you can assume, they are the larger centers that have more resources to dedicate to this. So Michigan, California, larger centers that, CONNSTEP is 30 people, they're 80, 120, so they can devote more time and resources towards it. So we're developing these go-to center collaboratives under cybersecurity umbrellas with some subset sets of them. And actually, Connecticut is pretty much the take charge of the whole New England and now further reached into the Northeast. So we have a team right now that just within the last 3 years, we hired one person in charge of this. He has 2 people underneath him right now, and we're just doing our 5-year strategic plan for 2020 to 25, and we see that team probably of people delivering cyber projects in the field as large as our quality and growth services right now in a 5-year period.
It's a huge problem out there, Bonnie.
Yeah.
And I think it's, people, maybe it is a little like quality. If you wait till someone tells you got to do it, you're waiting too long, because the risk to your business from a productivity application perspective is huge. And it's something that we deal with a lot, at the IT Direct side, of my life and helping people. And unfortunately, we spend far too much time getting calls from manufacturers that have been breached, that are hacked, that are down.
Sure.
And there's been some pretty big, issues in Connecticut in that small, mid-sized manufacturing and some larger ones too. That's been a real problem. So hopefully we can get the word out a little bit more on the importance.
When it started coming out, a couple years ago, it was more on the from attorneys and from ITAR compliance. That again, going back to our basis, was like, what does this mean? I came out of the meeting confused. So we've tried to bring it down. We're doing a large venue in April and bringing panels in, and it's more reality based. So this is what a breach means to you. And we know the DFARS, and so we're trained on that. When we go out, we're trying to bring those assessments really down to earth. So we have someone right now who's more, I'm going to call it, help desk support. So if you're a small business, how can I, president management team, how can I put a something up on your desktop that you can watch that'll give you a signal if something's going wrong? You don't have to know exactly what's going on. How can you start monitoring it? It's something that you can see and be active. Really simplistic stuff. Where is your stuff? Is it in the cloud? Is it here? And then we have the larger ones that are the bigger clients that need our services. Give me the DFARS and the compliance at a much higher level, and that are building their systems internally. So, and that's what we're doing with our initiative with NIST and spearheading it for the New England. We're actually involved with OEA on the federal level, and we are helping the smaller centers throughout New England that don't have a lot of large manufacturers, have just smaller ones, Vermont, New Hampshire. New Hampshire has quite a few, but are different than Connecticut and Massachusetts, and helping them with some just basic desktop assessments and things that they can gauge to know when something's getting wrong. Again, that awareness of it. But I think it's a huge opportunity. I think it's another big place for workforce that we're going to be seeing for training, as much as we're seeing different training in our workforce from being operators or measurement or blueprint reading. I see that in the technology vein of software. I was just at a meeting.
Especially if you're looking at 4.0 and robots and cobots as programming.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah,
it's a huge opportunity. Let me see if we could just switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
I think I referenced earlier the combination or the partnership between CBIA and CONNSTEP, and maybe you can sort of talk about the genesis of that and what the value is. Why those two things working closer together is better than when they were separate.
Sure. Well, in our own organization, just like we hear and what we're preaching to our clients, where's your market? Where's your growth? What are you doing differently than what you've been doing before? Our board was looking at a downsizing in manufacturing. When I took the job, there was just under 5,000 manufacturers, and we're hovering right under 4 right now. And a lot of that are the same manufacturers here, but they've been bought up or they've consolidated. Growing manufacturing right now, in more manufacturers coming in, it's been a slow period. So we're looking at where does CONNSTEP grow their base and get out there and really I don't want our project growth comes from reaching more people, which is our mission to helping more people. So one follows the other.
Sure.
So Joe Brennan, who's president of CBIA, was on our CONNSTEP board, served as our secretary, and so we had a conversation. And I just said, Joe, we're talking about through the national network collaboration of the Northeast centers. We're still independent centers, but go work with Massachusetts and Rhode Island. You know, you both have electric boat. You know, work on these things in conjunction with each other. And I said, and you have manufacturers that some of them aren't our clients. I have clients that aren't some of your manufacturers, and you're always trying to bring value based to your membership. We bring value to our clients. And I think more important than that was a message to tell people in Connecticut, you need to start looking at other companies, agencies, membership groups that can work better to grow the base than working in silos, almost like in competition.
Yep.
You know, it always behooves me that we're such a small state that we think we could work together, but it's sometimes just, it's the opposite because we're so small. So we started tossing the idea around what would it look like and what would the messaging be, and it was just for doing that, you know. CBIA's got a big advocacy arm. They are the voice up, you know, at the Capitol, and in the state, that's not what we do.
Sure.
You know, our federal contracts don't afford us lobbying. We have a group that we support as a coalition down in D.C., but that's outside of any funding. That's CONNSTEP's, you know, piece of reserves. So. And that's the first thing that we hear a lot when we go out to our clients. What can we help you with? How can you get regulatory compliance through DEEP? Or how can you help us with taxes or tax credits? And we say, we don't do that. Well, now we have a partner that we can say, but our partner can do that.
Sure.
So, and we can help small businesses, which, you know, just in this legislative session that's going on right now, we're still looking at different ways for FMLA and minimum wage and healthcare and a bunch of things that affect especially those businesses that are 50 and under.
Sure.
So we started talking about it. It seemed like a good idea. We courted for a year and, you know, had some legalities to look at of how we look at the instruments. And we also thought we wanted something more than saying CONNSTEP and CBIA are partnering. So thus we came up with the affiliation. We still wanted to be our own entity, a 501c3. CONNSTEP, its own membership group. It has its insurance arm. So we thought we would coexist. We moved our space to Hartford into the CBIA headquarters. And we called ourselves an affiliate. And we tried to make a strong statement that we were working together, not just for what we did with our individual veins of business services through our organizations, but for the good of improvement of Connecticut economy.
And now that we're coming up on 2 years post-affiliation,
July, yeah.
Do you feel like it's kind of achieving the objectives that you guys set out when you first started talking about this?
I surely do. There's going to be, there's some new things that we're building together. What we did with the first year is get to know each other.
Sure.
You know, we moved a staff, we're 100 people now. So CONNSTEP used to be a small organization. We're now a large organization. So a lot of that was just building a culture together. We spent the first year analyzing a lot of data, looking at, you know, what we had in our CRM system. We used Salesforce, looking at clients that we thought, you know, asked for different services that we didn't serve and things that they served right now. Which of those services had the most impact? They have a large service on energy that most of our manufacturers that are high-end users.
Yep.
This is a good product for them.
Sure, yeah.
Do that. So we had some people from our business development side and their membership side and membership sales working together for 6 months, learning both products at a time, and now putting together, we recently have been working on our value prop and our messaging as one organization. And
have you seen that crossover happening where you're finding some of the CBIA members are like, hey, CONNSTEP would be great, and vice versa? Has that already been kind of in the achieving stage?
Yes, it's there. And also what happened that I wouldn't say slowed us down, but put another cog in the wheel. Another organization came into CBIA. They're now called Ready CT, which is a lot. It's education and workforce in downtown Hartford in the K through 12 space, which adds a whole nother level of what curriculum and future work that we should be building for manufacturing education for future pipelines.
Sure, well, it's a long-term workforce, right? There you go.
Yeah, so we're just working on an initiative right now for looking at 8 pieces of best curriculum in the state of Connecticut, looking at 2 in Rhode Island, because, you never do this in your own vacuum.
Sure,
you say, what else is out there that could be better? And hopefully getting, after the project's done in a 2-year period, a repository of what it looks like to be built that people can actually go see as manufacturers of who has what, of where they should be sending people and getting their next employee from.
That's exciting. Building new stuff for the future. That's awesome. Here, we're starting to wrap up. Before we get to our rapid fire round, I just wanted a couple quick things. One, talk about the CMC. I know you're involved in the it was the Connecticut Manufacturers Collaborative, right? I know you've been involved in that. That was, I think, an outgrowth from, CBIA and CONNSTEP. I know a big part of that. Can you talk a little bit about your involvement in CMC and what you see as CMC and its impact on the manufacturing landscape in Connecticut?
Sure. I'm going to give some credit to Joe here, because Joe, myself, Christine Pentima, and someone from the NHMA, Jerry Klepper, who has retired, thought of this about 8 years ago.
Okay.
Let's get all the membership groups together and let's see if we can be one voice.
Sure.
Because it's always Hartford has the capital, but New Haven doesn't. So, and it didn't go well. The intentions were good, but it was massive. So we got people from, other nonprofit groups that weren't just manufacturing, people in education.
It just got a little over too big.
It was over the top. No one could hear themselves in a room of 100 and some odd people. So
much for one voice.
So Joe kind of had this idea again of saying, what if we start bringing, now that you're here, the other manufacturing membership groups? So it was a slow start about a year ago in September, and we just, not to be non-inclusive of everybody, but to keep it focused. So we invited manageable. So we just took the membership organizations that were 100% serving members of manufacturers. Nothing else.
Got it.
So NHMA,
EMA, SMA.
Yes. Yep. And we asked that the directors, and they could bring a couple of their members with them, and we started forming some meetings. There's no legal entity to this group. We're not it's people, and we started finding that if we kept it to a small group, then we could build out a wheel of saying where it is. And so we sort of got it by district, and now everybody has who they work with in their district. They can bring back information to their associations. We, said there was nothing to do of, no one was trying to compete to take anybody's members. We all just wanted to be one voice. That being said, we came up with 4 or 5 really important points based out of, the most important point is NHMA could go back to their members and say, what does this group want? And we took all this information and we came up with some legislative content that we proposed to then, Governor-elect Lamont, and said, these are the items that we need to look at in manufacturing, workforce, technology, some of the legislation. Presented it to him, and we also said, we need someone from business and industry to be somewhere in the state offices that represent us, not just state legislative people, because they don't hear the same thing that we hear from the manufacturers.
And there's the manufacturing czar, or now called the chief manufacturing officer, or Colin Cooper, whatever you want to call him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, filled that role. Yeah, came out of CMC. That's exciting. And are you seeing that? Are you still pretty involved in that group? Do you go to the meetings? How is it going?
Yeah, we host them. Eric Brown of CBIA has been the facilitator. It's taken on a life. I mean, it's almost it's a part-time job for him, not as much for me, but we have meetings once a month. We bring in speakers from the outside, and we're trying to map out things. We've done a really great map of what we think the comprehensive high schools. We're looking for pockets of improvement. So we mapped
Keep
out
the improvements manageable, like we kept the group manageable.
Here's a small example. We're looking for workforce. Where are we missing opportunities? So we mapped out the comprehensive high school, and we found that there's 30,000 kids going through there, and there's a huge non-complete rate. And so we said, what are happening to those?
Right.
Those are potential people that we can, grab onto. So we're in the throes right now of doing some, working with the caucus. We have a meeting with the manufacturing caucus. And so we can go up there and we can talk as a group. And I can tell you, we were just with, Senator Joan Hartley, who's a real big advocate for manufacturing. She's taken charge of the caucus over the past few years, and she has found that one voice is so much less chatter than a bunch of associations having different members come up there, because the hearings go on all day, people are busy, and it doesn't resonate as much as one. So everybody is still being heard, but we agree on a couple of points and one or two people to deliver
plus it's also easier to act on less points.
Sure.
So what do you see as the future of CBIA over the next decade? I'm sorry, CONNSTEP rather. I don't know. Yeah, the CBIA affiliation. Sorry. What do you see?
I see that as a changing organization too, just because of what they've been doing to be proactive with CONNSTEP and Ready CT. Again,
what's the next decade for CONNSTEP? We've talked a little about I-4O. I know about continuous improvement. What do you see as CONNSTEP, the vision of CONNSTEP, and what's going to be achieved in the next 10 years?
I see that we're balancing the people. We'll always have people that'll need training and continuous improvement. So I see that as a piece of our bucket. We're now probably about 40% in 30 to 40% on those top line growth achievements, and the rest on. I see that flipping much greater than that, adding 10 or 20% over the next 5 years.
Into that growth bucket, you're saying?
Yeah, to that growth bucket, because we've got to get more business for, again, we're very heavily focused that we're all making product for our existing supply chain, but there's other pockets of, manufacturing's important, but this parlays into other industries too, bioscience and other things that are in Connecticut that we can offer some of our same services. Continuous improvement.
Do you think you're going to see CONNSTEP branching out to other non-manufacturing industries?
I would love to see us. We've been dabbling over the past few years. We have a couple of people and some great projects that we've been delivering in the medical field. Healthcare needs process improvement as much as our manufacturers, if not more, as you know that.
Anyone who's ever had to deal with healthcare at all, yeah.
So do I see us delivering it directly, partnering with somebody that does that? It's the same processes, it's different terminology.
Sure.
Through a patient coming through ER, but it's same results. So we've been working with some senseis in those fields that are giving us some guidance. I think this growth opportunity will bring that, as well as, if I could see in the next 5 years that some of the improvements that we're telling to be, as I said, embedded into UConn Tech Park and saying, this is what it means to you. In 5 years, we can start seeing some of those people really implementing and seeing some of that automation and technology actually being applied and implemented. Ooh. So we're educating right now. I see growth in there. And a community base, as I talked to you about, of, Parkville and our city's refurbishing, of helping with the social aspect of building the economy.
Well, let's make that kind of our final point before we go to rapid fire. You mentioned Parkville a couple of times. I haven't really talked about it on the podcast. I don't know what people know about it. It's been in and out of the news, or mostly out, but now coming in. What do you know about it? Do you want to talk about what's happening in Parkville and Hartford?
Well, the city's changing there. It's bringing in technology. It's bringing in companies from outside of the U.S. to be able to, make a product better, faster than they can as an entrepreneur outside of the country. So if that's in, 5-year versus an 18-month period. But these people bring their families, they grow their business here, they have to have places to live. And I see this vision for what Hartford could be of doing this, getting people to live back in the city, getting transportation outside of the highway to get to where we came to today. We've talked about it for years that, the city used to connect by these back roads, not 84 only. I think that's an important thing for helping the economy of Connecticut be well-rounded as well as that. So I see us taking a part of that.
Invest in our cities, yeah.
Yeah, I see us taking a part of that, and I think that's a big driver of being with CBIA, that as the voice of growing the economy. I think it's a great vision for them too, of making the economy not only by laws and things that are legislative, but by doing the right things of improvement in the economy where people live.
Got to fill that first pew.
Yes.
Got to fill that first pew. All right, let's go to the rapid fire round. Are you ready?
Well, Colin warned me about that.
Yeah. Colin's not allowed to share my rapid fire secrets. Okay, here we go. Red Sox or Yankees?
Yankees.
Oh, Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Dunkin' Donuts.
When you take time off, you a staycation gal or exotic destination?
Exotic.
iPhone or Android?
Android.
Sports car or SUV?
SUV.
Do you have a favorite business book or most impactful business book?
I'm reading one right now that's called Cascades. I'm only halfway through it, but we were just given it as a center leadership team from our director at NIST MEP, and it's pretty thought-provoking. So I can't tell you if it's going to be my favorite till I finish it.
Well, listen, part of the reason I have that question is to learn new books. That's a new one for me, so that's on my list now. What's one thing, Bonnie, that you learned early in your career, early in your life, that you think helped propel you to the successes that you've had?
Listening to people that are much smarter than me and asking them for their time. I have an employee right now that's been there before me and, is much older and wiser than me, and asking for help from people when I didn't know things about legislation or writing a bill, how to do it. Engaging with other people in conversation, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I just tried to do it alone or thought I knew all the answers. I think as I retire, Ari, I just want to hang around people that are smart and learn from them. I think that's better than a job sometimes.
I can imagine. Yeah. Very good point, too. What's one thing, Bonnie, that you learned later in your life or later in your career that if you could go back and tell young Bonnie and she'd listen to you, that you think would really make a positive impact on her?
Stay focused on what you're doing. Sometimes I paid attention to too much chatter that wasn't value added. Some of the things that I learned just by what we do at CONNSTEP it's not only on the buying side. People buy for a reason, and sometimes you get all caught up of why you want to do this for them and sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. So listen to what people want and stay away from the noise. It just clouds you. Sometimes I got misfocused on listening to things that I thought, oh, these are really important, or I should be doing this. And then it sort of takes you off track, and then you lose a few months of doing that. So, be secure of knowing that you're on your path and staying to your plan, I think is, I've went off it a few times, trust me.
Sticking to your guns.
Sticking to your guns.
Never a bad place to be. Well, that's awesome, Bonnie. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
As one final thing to just wrap up, we've talked about a lot in our conversation today. And one of my big goals is for people to be able to learn and grow through listening and participating with the podcast. So I'd like to ask a guest at the end of all the stuff that we've talked about today, if somebody was listening and they had all their notes and you were like, hey, there's one thing that I talked about or that we talked about today, if they paid attention to that, and they implemented that, you think it'd bring them a lot of value. What's something we talked about today that you think kind of meets that standard?
Talking positively, just what we're doing here. I think your show is great, and I think what you're trying to do with this should be resonating with people, that we should be more involved listening to stuff like this. The glass is half full, not half empty, and not being sidetracked by things that, and I find myself being, oh God, I just read that article and it's bad. Just put it down and listen and be around positive people. I get a much better day, and I think most people would get a much better day of talking to people that want to do Parkville than they do with talking to people that said, oh, and GE moved out of here.
Right.
Those I think are very important. So And I'd like to have you have more people that want to talk that way on, on your podcast.
Well, I think we're like 29 or 30 and counting. We got lots more to go. I think we're like booked up into like June. It's crazy. Thank you.
It's really
well. I appreciate that. I think from my perspective, something we talked about today, real specifically, was just when you went through the buckets that CONNSTEP talks about. We had talked about growth and quality and continuous improvement, and I guess that's three things, not one thing. But to me, I think the ability for a business to focus and realize that you always have to be thinking growth, because when you're busy doing, that eventually needs to change, and customers needs change. So thinking about growth is super important. Quality is extremely important all the time. And of course, always getting better, because there's always can be a better way. So those like three buckets that CONNSTEP has to offer that we talked about, I think could really resonate with business owners large and small in Connecticut. And CONNSTEP's such a great resource. It's been talked about so many times. So, focusing on those three areas and maybe engaging with CONNSTEP. If people do that, I think they could really make a huge impact on your business. So many people we've talked to have said that, and I hope many more do, and continue to grow.
And you just have to do it. It's hard. That's another thing maybe I want to end with. It's hard to pick something and do it, because you ask and you think about it and you ponder, and then you say, just do it. Sometimes you just have to make a decision to do
go.
it. Yeah,
action.
Yeah. And go with your gut sometime too, that it's the right thing to do. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love it. That's a great spot to end. Bonnie, thank you so much for being on today. I appreciate it.
I'm really happy I was. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by IT Direct.
As always, thanks so much for tuning in. I definitely want your feedback and hope you subscribe. But what I want the most is to build a community where we learn and grow with each other. I hope you're getting a lot of value out of the time we're spending together. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next time.